We all want to be loved, don't we? But what happens when someone loves you a little bit too much? Today we're talking about Misery by Stephen King. This book introduces us to Paul Sheldon, a best-selling writer who suffers a car accident and finds himself at the mercy of Annie Wilkes, his #1 fan. At first it seems like Annie is his saviour, but soon over time Paul starts to notice some unusual things about Annie, and then before long he just realises, no, this isn't an unusual person, this is a psychopath, and I'm in danger. He doesn't know how long he's been there, he doesn't know how long he's going to stay as Annie gets more and more deranged. A lot of people will have seen the book starring James Caan and Kathy Bates. Honestly, I think this is maybe one of Kathy Bates's best performances of all time. She's fantastic. James Caan's really good in it as well. And the film is an absolute banger. But I think maybe the book is better, as is often the case. I've read a lot of Stephen King over the last year, and I think this is the first time that I've read one of his books that didn't contain any supernatural elements. There's a little reference to one of his other books, and so it's kind of happening in the same universe, but yeah, in this main story, there's no supernatural elements that are taking place. I think Stephen King is a writer that can really tap into and has a full access for the darker side of humanity. And I've mentioned on this channel before how I find Stephen King to be scariest whenever he does that, when he focuses on the kind of psychopaths rather than the monsters and the creatures that he creates. It's much scarier for me to read that. And so a character like Annie Wilkes is exactly what I'm looking for. I think one of the things that makes Annie Wilkes so scary is her unpredictability. One moment she can be blushing because Paul gave her a little compliment and she just wants so badly to take care of him. And she has this kind of weird relationship with him where she wants to be both his mother and his lover. And so she kind of gets all caught up and swooning and dabbing his brow. Ooh, I love you. And then she can absolutely just lose it and start trashing the room, running for an axe because Paul said a naughty word. This is a very terrifying situation to find yourself in, because if someone is consistently evil and almost demonic, then at least you know what to expect. But yeah, this kind of volatile way that she has, in a way that Paul just struggles to gauge and he struggles to dance around. I think my favorite theme that's explored in this book is the power of storytelling and how an author can kind of possess this intangible but very real magic of creating people that we can love as if they're our actual friends and our family, and how we feel when bad things happen to them. I've cried my eyes out. I've cried in front of this camera, in front of you, about characters that never existed. I've had tears streaming down my face about people that never existed, going through hardships that never happened. That's real. Some of my favorite people don't even exist. And listen, right? Annie Wilkes is mental. I'm not saying she ain't mental. What I'm saying to you is, haven't you ever had it where something has happened to a book character that you love possibly more than you love some of the people that are in your real life? And you've watched this person you love suffer or even die. You see people that you love and respect be tortured in ways that aren't right and aren't fair. You can't tell me, right, just between us, that if the writer that caused and inflicted this pain on someone you love was in the room when you read it, you can't tell me that you wouldn't feel a little bit of animosity, you know? And you might want to just give him a little, just a little one, just a little one, just a little one. A little one's all right. It's not. It's never all right. I'm joking. This is what we're seeing with Annie Wilkes multiplied by a million. Annie Wilkes as a character is just really fascinating because I think it would have been so easy to paint her as an idiot. But she's not an idiot. She's actually very intelligent. There are occasions in this book where we get to see she's a lot smarter than she lets on. And actually, part of this way that she is an act to lull Paul Sheldon into a kind of false sense of security, weirdly, right? I won't give any spoilers, just in case you haven't seen the movie or read the book. But there are some scenes in this book where Paul Sheldon feels as though he's kind of using a little bit of his suave manipulation on her to kind of alter the situation. And he feels like he's making progress and he's controlling her and making her do these things when really it was Annie in certain situations who was just allowing him to believe that, and it's actually her that's finessing him and she's been manipulating him. Very interesting. This actually happens a few times where, you're never quite sure who's on top. It's like captor versus captive as they're locked in this mental battle and they're just trying to both manipulate each other. Of course, Annie is in a commanding position because she's able to move freely around the house and he's kind of banged up and laying in bed. He's restricted in his movements. But yeah, this is definitely Annie's battleground. But Paul Sheldon is just doing everything he can and using his creative process to conjure up solutions. It's really great. Definitely, I would say Annie Wilkes has become one of my favorite Stephen King villains. I think she's one of his most iconic, and it's not down to her terrifying appearance or she doesn't possess any powers or anything like that. It's just a constant switching between homely little goofball, oh gosh darn it, to demented tormentor, and then all of a sudden childlike victim where she's just like nodding her head and doing as she's told. The speed with which she switches between all these personalities is so unsettling. Compared to a lot of books that I've read by Stephen King, like The Stand and It and The Talisman, Misery is a very short book. And because of that, even though the majority of the book takes place within the confines of a single room, it never feels like it's dragging. The action is always progressing in some way, and the stakes are constantly being heightened as the situation gets worse and worse. But even though things are constantly escalating, Stephen King, importantly, gives Paul Sheldon little moments in between these horrific scenes where Paul Sheldon is just sitting down in the room alone by himself, and he's reflecting on what has happened to him and what is going to happen to him. And because he's a very creative person, he's a writer, his creativity is almost like a curse because he's able to conjure up pictures in his mind of the horrors that await him. And almost always Annie Wilkes is able to exceed those expectations. There's this line that keeps coming up in the book over and over again where he's imagining these horrible things, and this line comes up, so vivid, so vivid, so vivid. And it is, he's able to really picture in great detail the horrible things that she's going to do. And it's like, he just wants to shut it off. I really like the early scenes where Paul starts to realize the extent to which Annie adores his books, specifically the Misery books. She's not just a fan of his, she is dangerously obsessed. And I only wish that these scenes maybe lasted a little bit longer. I think that Paul realizes almost too quickly, almost instantaneously, that he's in danger. And I would have enjoyed it more if the book took a bit longer to build that suspense. I seem to remember, it was a while ago that I watched that I watched the movie. But I think in the movie, it takes him a while to realize that she's insane. And there's something satisfying about that, right? As an audience member, knowing that this woman is crazy, and he just doesn't know. He's just kind of sitting there like, oh, thanks so much for the cup of coffee, you know? Oh, thanks so much. I owe you a lot, you know? And you're like, Paul, don't, like, she's nuts, man. I think the question of this video should be, where would you rank Annie Wilkes in your rankings of Stephen King villains? Is it just me who finds her to be scarier than Pennywise, or is that like a commonly held belief? I really think after reading Misery that this is going to be a favorite. It might not be my absolute favorite, but it's going to be a favorite in my Stephen King, the books that I've read by Stephen King. And I think that is largely down to the villain. Okay, let's get into the rankings. And let's start off with the plot. So this might be a little bit surprising, but I'm actually going to give the plot just a 3 stars out of 5. This book doesn't really rely on plot very much. It's much more about the characters. There's no kind of epic quest or hero's journey. There's no wide scope. It all, as I mentioned, majority of this book takes place within a single room. So plot isn't something that's heavily featured in this book. It's actually a very simple story. It's much more deep than it is broad. Characters, I mean, goes without saying, I'm going to give the characters 5 stars. Annie Wilkes, obviously I've spoken all about her, but also Paul Sheldon as well. I love the way that he implements his creativity to escape from certain situations. I think this is maybe the 3rd book that I've read where the protagonist was a writer. That's obviously something that Stephen King enjoys a lot, right? He used to say, write what you know. He knows maybe more than anyone what it means to be a writer. He likes to kind of insert himself in these situations and try and work his way out of them. It's fun. It's fun to read. The setting, I'm actually going to give the setting 4.5 stars out of 5. And again, that might be surprising because I just said, oh, it all takes place in a single room, most of it. And it's a very simple location, but I think it's a perfect location for this kind of story, really. You've got, of course, it's happening in the room, but there's like the snow outside, and that adds to the feeling of isolation. And then when we see a little bit more of the house, we see kind of candy wrappers all strewn over the floor, and it kind of gives us a little sense of the identity of Annie Wilkes. You've got animals that are kind of making noises, snorting and squealing outside. It's really great. It's atmospheric. Originality, I'm going to give it 3.5 stars out of 5. Maybe when this was originally published, it might have come across to me as more original, but you know, it seems like a pretty pretty standard captive story. And I know I keep saying it, but it's the characters that make this special. Not so original, you know, of a concept. Overall, even though my ratings have been a little bit up and down, I'm going to give this book overall 4.5 stars out of 5. It's easily, I think, in my top 5 Stephen King books that I've ever read. Maybe read about 25, 26 Stephen King books now. So yeah, easily in the top 5. And it's obvious why it's seen as such a classic. One of the things that I noticed actually when reading this book, and it was really surprising to me, that there seemed to be a lot of differences between this book and the movie. And so I'm going to make a video where I compare the movie and the book. And if you'd like to see that video, then you can click up here. Thanks so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it, and happy reading.